Welcome, everyone. My name is Tanya Arbet, host of today's webinar. Thank you for joining us. The topic of welcoming newcomers from Ukraine is very personal to me. I left Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, where I was born as a refugee in 1989. I left in peacetime without someone shelling, shooting, or blowing up my house. I was sponsored by HIAS, the Hebrew Immigration Aid Society, and the Jewish Federation of North America to immigrate here to Milwaukee, where I was reunited with a family who had fled Russia in the 1970s. Because of Federation support, I, along with my son, was able to acclimate and settle into our new home. Fast forward 33 years. In March of this year, I went on a mission to Poland with 30 other Federation volunteers and staff from around North America. We were on the ground for 36 hours and heard stories that will stay with me for a lifetime. We witnessed the unprecedented crisis of over 2 million people who have fled their homes in Ukraine and passed into Poland. To put it into context, this number is larger than the population of 2 Milwaukees. And these are just the refugees who have immigrated to Poland. There is an estimated 10 million refugees who are seeking safety from the heinous and senseless war. It was heart-wrenching to see and hear the devastating stories of loss. This is by far the worst refugee crisis since World War II. We quickly learned that our work is a long way from being completed. It has only just begun. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Milwaukee Jewish Federation, we are a 120-year-old organization that cares for the needs of the Jewish people and builds a vibrant Jewish future here in Milwaukee, in Israel, and around the world. We partner with the agencies that help fulfill our mission everywhere Jews live. Today, we are joined by 3 of these partners. HIAS and Jewish Federations of North America help us to fulfill our mission globally. Jewish Family Services is our local partner that provides services to our community in Milwaukee. While we're working feverishly to support Ukrainian refugees in Eastern Europe, we have the opportunity to support Ukrainian newcomers right here in Milwaukee. Today, we will hear from several experts how we can help. Darcy Hirsch, Managing Director of Public Affairs of JFNA, will give us an update on refugees who have applied to enter to the US. Basha Silverman, Senior Advisor for Ukraine and Refugee Resettlement at JFNA, will explain how to formally sponsor newcomers. Isabel Barton, Senior Director of Community Engagement Initiatives at HIAS, will talk to us about welcome circles. And Kevin Boland, Director of Social Services at Jewish Family Services, will tell us how JFS is supporting Ukrainian newcomers here in Milwaukee. Then we will wrap up with Q&A session moderated by Rabbi Hannah Wallach, Director of Leadership and Global Jewelry at the Milwaukee Jewish Federation. Please submit your questions to Q&A box, which can be found in your Zoom toolbar. Now it's my pleasure to welcome Darcy.
Thank you, Tanya. It's really a pleasure to be here with you today, and I really appreciate you sharing your personal story. We'll wait a minute till we'll get to the slides. Thank you. So today we're here to talk about how to welcome newcomers to Milwaukee and also what our national organizations are doing around the country. I'd like to talk a little bit about who we're talking about, right? Today we're going to learn about how to mobilize the community, but before we do that, let's take a step back and look at who and how many Ukrainians are coming to the US. So first of all, we want to talk about people that were already here when the war started. Russia invaded Ukraine at the end of February, and there were already 60,000 Ukrainians in the US that had been here on tourist visas or as students or through other means. And those Ukrainians were eligible for temporary protected status. And essentially they are here, here in the US, stuck, not being able to go back, not necessarily, with the resources that they need to succeed, separated from friends and family members who are currently in Ukraine. So that's one number I wanted to flag. The next is 20,000 Ukrainians who fled early on in the war, before the United States had developed a formal program for Ukrainians to seek refuge here. And those Ukrainians largely came through the southern border. I remember early on, I met a woman who had escaped with her son, her small child, and traveled through 5 countries to come up through the US-Mexico border, was actually received by the Jewish Family Service Agency in San Diego, and traveled to Brooklyn, where there's a large Ukrainian population, and was reunited with friends and family there. So there are folks who fled, who came through other means. And then, of course, there's the United for Ukraine program, which Basha and Isabel are going to speak out in much more detail. But I just wanted to be able to paint the picture first of what we're thinking about when we're thinking about the Ukrainians that need support here in the US, that there are over 100,000 essentially who arrived here through a variety of means before the Biden administration created its new program, Uniting for Ukraine. Next slide, please. Before we dive deeply into US resettlement efforts, of course, I want to talk about Jewish Federations of North America's efforts to support Ukrainians worldwide. Certainly, we responded the day after Russia invaded Ukraine to launch an emergency relief fund. As Tanya mentioned, she traveled on a mission to Poland. And we have raised a total of $73 million. We're very proud to have engaged federations around the country in raising these funds on an emergency basis. And we have allocated $61 million to support organizations working in Eastern Europe, working in Ukraine, working in Israel to resettle Ukrainians making Aliyah. And as the needs change, we'll continue to assess where those needs are most critical, and we'll allocate funds there. Last week, we just announced that we expanded our funding to organizations working in Ukraine, both to rebuild and to help ease the trauma of those that are still there, to 5 new nonprofits that we had not supported before. So as the needs change, we will continue to be making those allocations. Next slide, please. So connected with our work on the ground in the US is advocacy. We always say that you must advocate first and then you act. So we've been engaged in advocacy efforts on Capitol Hill with Congress and the administration since day one. And these efforts with partners like HIAS and other refugee resettlement organizations and faith partners have allowed for resettlement agencies to be able to respond in the way that they can. Certainly when the war started, we advocated that Ukrainians who are already here be given temporary protected status. We advocated for aid and continue to advocate for aid to Ukraine and to support Eastern Europe. We advocated for an extension to the Lautenberg Program, which allows religious minorities who are historically persecuted to seek refuge in the US. Most recently, we and others were able to expedite work permits for Ukrainians who are in the US, and that's something I'm sure you'll hear about from the Jewish Family Service Agency. And last, I have to add that we are very proud that yesterday an Afghan Adjustment Act was introduced, which will allow Afghans a pathway to citizenship. And we will be working closely with HIAS and our other partners to advocate for the passage of that bill. Because certainly the work for Ukrainians, the work with Afghans, it's all tied to our historic experience of, as refugees coming to the U.S. and is deeply rooted in our Jewish values. With that, I am very pleased to pass the torch to my colleague Basha Silverman, who is going to speak in much more detail about the Uniting for Ukraine program.
Thank you, Darcy, and thank you all of you for participating, and thank you for inviting us. I'm just going to quickly cover what is the Uniting for Ukraine program. It's actually very unique for the United States to create such a program, relying almost completely on the private citizens and their abilities to welcome Ukrainians who are seeking refuge in the United States. This is not dependent on professional service providers like JFS, who you'll hear from later. This is something that anyone who meets the criteria can participate in. So Uniting for Ukraine, you also might hear me refer to it as U for You, is an opportunity for an individual in the US to apply to be a sponsor and bring an individual or family from Ukraine to your home or to a home that you identify is safe, and you pull together the services that they need on your own or with others in your community. The Uniting for Ukraine program for the Ukrainian families it doesn't include everything that one would receive if they came through the existing refugee resettlement program. So Darcy just mentioned the Afghan Adjustment Act. Just about 1 year later, our Congress is considering a path to permanency for those evacuated from Afghanistan. Those Ukrainians that come through Uniting for Ukraine do not have a path to permanency. An act of Congress will be required, and JF&A will be on the scene, as Darcy underscored. But at this time, it only allows one to stay for 2 years. They are able to access work authorization. However, there's a bit of a backlog, and they are able to access certain, but not all, federal benefits. This is one of the most recent weekly numbers updates that we receive from the federal government, which really shows the number of applications that have been submitted on behalf of Americans to welcome Ukrainians seeking refuge in the United States. So 92,000 have been filed. Almost half of them have been approved, but you'll notice only 30,000 of them have actually traveled as of yet. And that's because there is some time that they have between approval and their date of travel. The box on the left shows the top 10 metro areas of where the applications originated and have been approved. And you will see that they aren't necessarily exact cities, but they include regions. And we, Darcy and I and our colleague Max, have really focused on ensuring that Jewish communities in those cities have all the resources that they need to welcome Ukrainians that are on their way. So there's 2 ways that you can get involved. There's many ways, but 2 ways that I want to focus on right now, and that is you can sponsor a Ukrainian individual or family to come to the US through the Uniting for Ukraine program, or you can help a Ukrainian individual or family that is already here. As Darcy said, many came through alternative routes, not using the Uniting for Ukraine system, and do not necessarily have access to its benefits. So first, let's talk about becoming a sponsor. So you, the sponsor, will need identification, and you'll need documentation that can provide evidence that you can provide financial support for up to 2 years. The beneficiary is the person on the other end of the application. So this would mean that you would need a name. This works well for people that have family or friends of family, and they have the name, they have their passport number, they have all of the information necessary. And most of the applications that have been processed, that 92,000, were examples where the sponsor was able to name a beneficiary. We've been getting a lot of inquiries, and I'm sure that you have as well, or you've been thinking about it. What if I want to be a sponsor, but I don't have a name? I just want to be helpful. Isabella is going to talk about how you might be able to do that. So I'm just going to foreshadow for a second there. Regardless of whether or not you use a matching system like HIAS's system that Isabel's going to talk about or not, in the US, you have to complete a application called an I-134. And I'm just going to show you, we can share this slide deck, but it's actually a pretty simple application. On my link there just took me to the USCIS website. You'll click here and fill it out. You'll have to attach a few documents. And if you need instructions, the instructions for completing the form are also available. Let me just shut this. Okay, sorry. So what happens once you're approved? Once you're approved, whoops, you'll be able to have make contact with your beneficiary, connect with them. They will receive their travel authorization, and you'll be able to discuss next steps and special needs. You'll be able to make the travel arrangements, and those travel arrangements will be your responsibility to both arrange and cover the expenses for. And then if you are going to choose not to necessarily be a sponsor, but you want to help someone that is already in the US, we strongly encourage you to do that. There are individuals that are already here that need our help. They are knocking on the doors of Jewish Family Service and other resettlement agencies. And these professionals cannot do this work without volunteers and individuals like yourselves. So please reach out to your local resettlement agencies and your JFS. And we have Kevin on today's call, so I'm sure he'll tell you about their role. And I also wanted to cover that, you know, or maybe highlight what those additional needs might be for someone that's already here or someone you welcome. The issues around housing, transportation, food, counseling, employment, all of these are additional needs that are outside of the bounds of the Uniting for Ukraine program and require local responses, local solutions, and innovation to really leverage the jobs that are available in your town, food accessibility, English as a second language training, et cetera. So it's going to take a village. And before I hand it off to Isabel from HIAS to tell you a little bit more about what HIAS is doing to help support your volunteer efforts and help you match with a Ukrainian individual or family, I would be remiss if I did not encourage you to stay in touch with and continue to follow JFNA's response, be a part of our efforts in terms of advocacy and access to our resources. Please follow this website, and thank you for having me.
Sorry, I'm now trying to share my screen, but of course it's never as easy as it should be. So apologies. I'm going to introduce myself while trying to share my screen. It's not showing up. I declined tech help right at the beginning, and now I'm regretting it because it's not working. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what HIAS is doing, particularly around welcome circles. I cannot find the right thing to share, which is rather annoying.
Do you want me to share my screen? I have your PowerPoint and you can go ahead and talk. Okay.
I would very much like that. Just skip over the first
problem.
Two. Okay,
No problem.
thank you.
An example of our partnership. We work super closely with HIAS. I have her PowerPoint.
So yeah, just skip over the first two because we've already been covered by Darcy and Basha, and we will enter now. I will just start talking, and then whenever Basha manages to pull it up, that will be wonderful. So I'm very happy to be here and talk to the Milwaukee community. I I'm going to tell you a little bit about HIAS's Welcome Circle approach. So we, in response to the Afghan crisis, now a year ago almost, we launched the Welcome Circle project. And it was in partnership with the Community Sponsorship Hub. And it was a model for private sponsorship of newcomers fleeing Afghanistan. And so it was seen as being, we saw it as being a complement to traditional refugee resettlement. And it was responding to this huge need of 76,000 people. You can skip to the third. 76,000 people, that Afghans that had been, picked up and brought over to safe havens, as they were called, or army bases in the US. And then the government said, okay, now let's resettle, and looked around at the unfortunately decimated traditional refugee resettlement program, and realized that there was really very little capacity within the system to deal with the volume. And so, when I say decimated, it was decimated from the last 4 years of the administration, when there was really very, very much an under, the infrastructure was sort of pulled apart, and very few refugees were allowed to be come through the system. And so HIAS bought into this system, and we decided to create a Welcome Circle model that really built on our base in the Jewish community across the country. And so we became an umbrella, a sponsor circle umbrella under Community Sponsorship Hub, and we built out this initiative. So this is based on a structure that was already in use in Canada. It's based on 5 individual adults that come together and provide all forms of support, wraparound support to the newly resettled new neighbor, as we often call them. And now we've taken this model and we have adapted it for Ukraine. I do want to say that we have 2 incredible welcome circles in Milwaukee who have been working with Afghan families for the last 6 months, almost 6 months now. Finding helping with everything from picking them up at the airport to arranging homes, finding jobs, registering children at school, signing up for Medicaid, all the different benefits, and so many more. And I just wanted to shout out Shir Hadash and CEBJ circles for all of the incredible work they've been doing. And they have been supported by one of our liaisons, our higher circle liaisons, who is basically like a case manager for the volunteers rather than for the beneficiaries. So can you move it forward, Basha? Is that the next one? Great. So, I spoke a little bit about, I just go about the movement of welcome for Jewish communities. We were able to do this because we had a constituent base of the welcome campaign. There's so many words with welcome in it in HIAS. It's obviously, there's an obvious reason for it, but it's very confusing. But we had relationships with over 800 synagogues and communities around the country, and we went out to them, and it was incredible the amount of support and work that these communities have sort of come. So we are also expanding and working with other faith communities as part of these circles, but it sort of was an important base for us. So what's required of circles? It's a core group of 5 to 8 people, minimum of 5. Everyone has to do a background check. There's a required online training. There's a raising of funds. There's a submission of a formal welcome plan, a minimum 6-month commitment, and then we vet and approve it. Okay, that's the sort of what, but why? We move on to the next slide, please. Why do we do this? We feel very strongly that there are opportunities for every personality type to engage in the work. It really brings the community together. We've had so many stories from our circles that have been operating. We have 35 around the country who are working with Afghans right now, who are who all say this has really brought our community closer. We've had a rabbi come to us and say, we want to do this every time. Like, you know, we're just trying to raise money for the next circle. And he said the people are engaging in with the community that have not been engaged ever before. So that's like an amazing piece for us. And it really, importantly, it really provides an extra additional support for newcomers. And even, you know, you heard just before about volunteers working with the local JFS. We all know that volunteers add huge capacity to all organizations as they're implementing, as they're doing the resettlement work. But we also know that it adds huge added value. You really get to know your community through those people who are getting on the bus with you and walking you down the street and understanding where to buy the groceries from. And I just, the piece that's really important to us at Highest is that it's actually also filling a huge gap. You know, United for Ukraine is it's a decentralized model. It is the way that the refugee resettlement program works traditionally is that all refugees come through the US government, and then from there they are placed in agencies and affiliates. It's more complicated than that, but there's a sort of an accountability. You know where people are going. There's a level of safeguarding there just because you know who's going, where they're living, how they're engaging. And for this United for Ukraine, there are very few safety checks in place. And I'm not talking about for the beneficiaries. They go through the same background checks. I'm actually talking about those people who are sponsoring. People are sponsoring, and there are stories of Ukrainians who have come to local affiliates, the local agency, and said, I was sponsored by someone and it's not a good situation. You know, we have got many anecdotal stories about trafficking issues that have come about. So we feel like we are really filling a gap, and that has changed a little bit since resettlement, since affiliates are now being funded by the State Department to provide a certain amount of resettlement services, although not initial resettlement services. But we feel like through this way, we're building out some safeguarding because we know what our circles, you know, that our circles are above board and they have some kind of understanding of what needs to happen in order to make sure that these people can reach a point of being self-sufficient within some period of time. Basha, please move. Not yourself, the slide. Okay, so this is a little list about the resources that we provide each Highest Welcome Circle. I do want to say that we actually don't, this is not just a welcome circle for Ukrainians also that just come through U4U. We do have welcome circles that are working with beneficiaries who came and crossed over the border and came through that route. And we could have them for people who are dealing with going through TPS as well. That is not, we don't sort of say only through U4U. So the things that we provide, the resources that we provide for Highest Welcome Circles are listed here. I'm not going to go through them. I think they're excellent. Our liaisons work almost like troubleshooters with the community, with the leaders of the circle, and we've had incredibly good feedback. We're just in the middle of doing an evaluation of this work, of the Afghan circles. So the one big difference between the Afghan circles and the Ukraine circles is that we have taken on working on a database that we are calling MADI. It's Highest's Madeleine Albright matching algorithm for displaced individuals. Very big and flashy name for something that we feel isn't very big and flashy, but is really essential. You know, they're on the beneficiary side, there are people who do not have the privilege of having contacts elsewhere, who do not have the ability to support themselves by reaching out to their contacts and finding people in the US to sponsor them. So on that side, we feel it's important for us, we're providing a sort of matching ability to match the beneficiaries into the US, and also in the US, we have circles and individuals who are sponsors who are looking for matches, looking for beneficiaries to sponsor. So we've built out this database, and the reason why we're able to do it is because we have people on the ground in Poland, in Moldova, in Romania, and also we have a very, very close partner organization that we founded and now support within Ukraine. So we have a lot of contacts on the ground. So we're able to refer into our database with our relocation officers, do intakes, refer into the database, and at the other end, the sponsors have to be a sponsor circle. They do all the nice checks and balances, and they do their welcome plan, and then they can plug into the database. And then there's a very basic matching algorithm that happens, and out spits I shouldn't say out spits, but out comes a first choice, which is then offered to the beneficiary. The beneficiary can say yes or no, and then it can move on to the next one. So I think I've actually gone into more detail about the database, and then there's going to be more on the next slide as well. But I don't know if it's needing to, but I think I need to go into too much details. The real ultimate goal, as I put in that box, is to connect welcome circles and Ukrainian beneficiaries safely. And I think that for us is the key piece of this work that we're doing at this moment. Sorry, I have a child that's just walked in, so apologies for that. Onward to the next slide, please. So I've run through this already. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but you can see vetted and approved welcome circles, fill in a form, noting their capacity, and they do basically like a dating profile about them and about why they should be chosen. And then the beneficiary fills in a form about their needs and trying to understand whether they've got any medical needs particularly, or the size of their group. And then at the end, they come up with a potential match. Moving. Oh, and that's the end. That is the end. I'm very happy to talk about it. I think the thing that's really important for us is that this welcome circle model is something that can be adapted within all forms of the sort of setup. So we work in parallel and in partnership with the local resettlement, with the work going on locally. So it's actually, it can be just working as an additional support for the local agencies. I think that is it.
Okay. I think that I'm up next. So let me share my screen here, and thank you very much, Isabel. All right. Okay, so if this is working correctly, everyone should be able to see my first slide here. So I'll just go and go to the next one. So I want to thank everyone for having us here today. It's already said, my name is Kevin Boland. I'm the Director of Social Services for Jewish Family Services here in Milwaukee. I am joined by Beth Mumper, who is our Jewish Community Case Manager and primary contact for services in the Jewish community and for our newcomers. She's going to slide over with me here in a minute when we get to the question and answer portion to answer questions for you. And before I get started, I need to take a moment to thank, and if I miss anyone on the list, I apologize. It was not purposeful, but I would like to thank JF&A, HIAS, the JCRC, lots of acronyms, I apologize, the Welcome Circles, the Milwaukee Jewish Federation, our local synagogues, the Jewish community, because and rabbis and cantors and rebbitzin and everyone else for your support. Because without your support, I'm not sure how we get this all done. There's a lot of things that happen, and to echo Basha, yes, it takes a village, and we are blessed to be in such a great village here in Milwaukee. So thank you. A little bit of information there about Jewish Family Services. We've been around for over 155 years, helping people. This is what we do. So what I would like to do is just take a few minutes to talk about our core programs here at JFS. Bear with me, there's a reason for this, and we'll get into that as we move down to the end of the presentation. But we have three core areas. We have housing, we have clinical services, and we have case management services. Now, our housing located in Brown Deer includes both Deerwood Crossing and the Harry and Jeanette Weinberg residences at Bradley Crossing. Deerwood is licensed assisted living for individuals or adults over age 55. We provide medication, administration, meals, medication administration, education and socialization programmings, and all kinds of other fun stuff, not only for the residents, but for their families when they visit. And then at the Harry and Jeanette Weinberg residences there at Bradley Crossing, we also provide services, programming, access to resources. We have a beautiful green space. If you're ever in town and have and enjoyed gardening, please join us. We have a huge public shared garden that we'd love to have you come help either prune or plant something with us. At the Deerwood Crossing, we have 66 units, and at Bradley Crossing, we have 114 units. Those 114 units house young adults, older adults, seniors, elderly, and individuals with disabilities, and it is affordable housing for people. So we're very proud of those facilities there. If you'd like a tour or like to stop by, or would love to hang out, please let me know. The next core is our mental health services. And within our mental health services, we have two clinics, one here at JFS, another in Brown Deer, located at Bradley Crossing. And you can see by our slide that we provide individual, family, and child counseling. We do psychiatric medication management. We provide services for survivors of sexual assault and domestic violence. We do school-based counseling. And so we're actually in the schools providing support not only for the kids there, but for the teachers and administrators and for the families. Grief counseling. And when we talk about some of our newcomers, grief counseling is very important. They're coming from a very traumatic event, leaving their home from war to coming here. So we're able to offer those services to them, as well as our late life counseling and friendly callers. And that's for individuals over age 60 that live in Milwaukee. We're able to check in with them and provide counseling as needed. Whoop, wrong way. So now we're starting to get into our case management programming. And the first slide talks about case management that provides disability case management, which provides services for individuals dealing with disabilities and mental illness who live in the community. We are able to support them. We have a corporate guardianship program where we have court-ordered clients that we provide support to. We have our wraparound program here in Milwaukee, which serves children with and teens dealing with mental illness and other co-occurring diagnoses, drug and alcohol, those sorts of things. We also have our CCS program, Comprehensive Community Services, which serves adults with mental illness and drug and alcohol. Our My Choice Family Care program, which works with frail adults. And then our community programs. And this is something, as we're starting to move into the next slide, we'll talk about some of those services and programs that our newcomers directly access. These are programs that are provided throughout the community for everyone from kids to adults, to individuals with special needs and developmental delays and mental illness, to our Holocaust survivor community, to our Russian community and Ukrainian community. We just like to get out there and really provide both socialization and educational programming. All of these are a combination of funding from government contracts, donor support, grants, philanthropy, and from the Milwaukee Jewish Federation, United Way, and others, that without them we wouldn't be able to provide those services. Our next slide, here we go, talks about those other programs that we have that most often are accessed by our newcomers. So we have to start with that by talking about the Jewish community services. Within the Jewish Community Services, we have Beth Mumper, who is our Jewish Community Case Manager, supported by Leah Trachtenberg, who is our advocate, who is able to provide services for our Jewish Ukrainians that make their way over here for 90 days or more for free. So you get a case manager that helps you, and I'm going to talk about this in a minute, with all those things that you need to know about when you first get here. Everything from enrolling in school, finding out where, finding your way around, helping with paperwork, but I digress. So we also have the J-Help program, and that allows us to provide emergency financial assistance to Jews in the community, as well as other funding that we've been able to receive to help our Ukrainian newcomers. Now, as this is happening, we also partner with our social services for Russian speakers. There are 4 case managers in that program, 2 of which are from Russia and 2 are from Ukraine, who are able to help us with case management, help us with language, and I'll talk about the language in a moment, as we help someone get accustomed and kind of normalize life now in Milwaukee. Define normal, but to be able to make it a little bit more of a day-to-day, this is home. And then we also have our social services for Holocaust survivors, which works with many of our individuals from Russia that have been here for a number of years, and working with material claims to provide them support and resources. So what we've seen as we move into what we're able to do is that Jewish Family Services is not a resettlement agency. We work with the resettlement agencies. We have working relationships with Lutheran Social Services, with the International Institute of Wisconsin, with Jewish Social Services of Madison in Dane County, to help provide that support. We have a long history of resettling into folks from Russia and other countries, but at this point in time, like I said, we're the support. We're there to help out. So what we're here to talk about really is our newcomers, and I want to share some information about the newcomers that we've been working with. Before the war broke out, we started receiving calls from other countries on behalf of family members in the Ukraine who were considering coming to the United States. So we received calls from Ukraine, from Russia, from Belarus, from Canada, which sounds kind of out of the ordinary, but it's really not. We receive calls here at the Milwaukee Jewish Family Services from all over the country. Just this morning, I received an email from the adult kids who lived in Israel, who were concerned about what services their mother, who lives in Milwaukee, was receiving. We've received calls from as far away as Alaska and Florida and all over. So we're pretty used to fielding calls. We've even helped individuals. We had someone who called from Indianapolis who was upset with their JCC. So we helped mediate in the conversation between that individual and that JCC. So we started getting calls. And then we started hearing from the friends and family of the newcomers that were here about, we have friends and family coming from the Ukraine. What can we do? How can we help? So we started working with them. And what we saw is that so far, the families and individuals we're working with all came here, no matter how they got here, with some sort of connection already. It was friends, it was family, it was their ex-wife knew someone that knew someone, and they were able to get here. We have had newcomers by way of Mexico, where we worked with folks that were vacationing in Mexico. War broke out. They couldn't get back to the Ukraine. So they had friends or family here in Milwaukee, so they got here. Then we've had where individuals have went from Ukraine to Poland to here. And in some cases, it's been individuals that have gotten here, oftentimes kids, followed by parents. And then we're trying to work, as we hear about, grandparents coming too. So while all this is going on, we have been finding that we've seen people get here, or newcomers get here, temporary protected status, with and without humanitarian parolee status, or we're helping them apply for that or figure out what to do. We've worked with people that are here on a traveler's visa and they were seeking asylum. We've had people arrive with and without sponsors. We've had people arrive who thought their family were going to be sponsors, only to find out that they weren't, or in some cases they were. We're seeing people come with some money, some funds, some access to a savings or checking account, and others who have none. And we've also seen it we've been able to practice up on our Ukrainian and Russian. We have seen some that have come with absolutely no English, and we've been partnering, Beth has been partnering with our Social Services for Russian Speaker program to help translate, or they've come with English better than mine, which isn't that difficult to do, but they've been spot on with that. But one of the things that has been very interesting is that the majority have voiced right away that their intention is to stay here in the United States, that they're going to want to make home here in Milwaukee, not only in the United States. And so we start having the conversations about seeking asylum, start looking into, eventually, how do you become a citizen, all of those things, as we start those initial conversations. So for everyone that we've been working with so far, we have done a lot of case management. We have done a lot of partnering for translation services with our Social Services for Russian speakers. What we have found, I don't know if anyone here speaks more than one language. What we have found is that you might be able to speak English, but trying to understand it in a government form. I'm a native English speaker and I can't understand all of the government forms. So in understanding those forms, it's very important that we're able to explain it back in Ukrainian or Russian so far. So that's something that we've seen with our case management. We've provided a lot of gift cards to Walmart, to Pick and Save, or to grocery stores, to go purchase clothing, school supplies, all of those things. To try and help, like I said, normalize what it means as you're starting to make home here in Milwaukee. So you're able to go to the store and do something that you would have always done. We've helped a lot with rent. We've helped a lot with gas cards. As newcomers have gotten here and they're borrowing vehicles or they're purchasing their own or anything, gas is expensive. So we need to help with that. We've helped with paying for utilities. One of the things that we're learning is that newcomers get here and they go and stay with families. All of those costs go up for those families. So we're able to help through support from the Federation and others to be able to help cross that gap a little bit. We also help access with local community resources, and we're very happy to say that we do have a benefits specialist on staff who is from the Ukraine, who is able to help as they reach the proper immigration status and can reach out to those services that they would be able to. We can help with that. So we've also helped with paperwork and understanding all that. And like I said, getting kids enrolled in school. So that is the end of what I have here. What I want to leave you with is it takes a village. We can't do it without everyone's support. We greatly appreciate that. Keep it coming. And if you know of someone that can use that help, please let us know. And JFS is here to help. All the services that I've been talking about are services and programs that we're able to provide not only to our newcomers, but to anybody here in the community. So please don't hesitate to let us know how we can help. Thank you for your time. I'll stop sharing.
So I just kind of,
She's got you muted.
I want to put my face out as he mentioned my name. I'm the Jewish Community Case Manager here at JFS. My focus is working with the Jewish community, and part of that population now is obviously our Jewish Ukraine newcomers that are here. And I'm here to support and provide them with resources that are needed, especially with their financial obligations. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask away, and I will answer it to the best of my ability.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay, Beth, that was a perfect segue to the next section of this webinar, which are questions. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat. I have a question just to start us off. The United for Ukraine program, I wonder, Darcy or Basha or anybody else, can you give sort of like a narrative example of somebody who has connected through U4U with sponsoring somebody from Ukraine and brought them over, and a little bit about that personal experience?
I don't,
I think that
Basha or
it-
Isabel?
I was thinking that Isabel might have like the better story, because she's so closely in touch with the welcome circles who have successfully done this in very safe ways versus some of the more scary stories that we've heard. Darcy and I tend to hear like, oh my gosh, this went really wrong. And Isabel gets to hang out in the splendor of altruistic peoples.
Wow, I'm not sure about splendor of altruistic people, but I will say that sounded very scary, Basha, and I think that it's not scary. For us, the U4U, the United for Ukraine process with welcome circles has actually, it's really only getting going now. Obviously, there are many Ukrainians that are entering, or 29,000 so far, entering through the U4U process. But for the main part, those were people who had family connections already and were able to like quickly put together the sponsor application and go through. And so our circles are only just beginning to work with Ukrainians. An example is, right now, is that we have a family that is a beneficiary that has just been matched with a community in California. They had a conversation with each other, having been matched, and the beneficiary was like, yep, this is right. And we sort of we set up the Zoom call, and then they together with some of our support put in the I-134 form, and then that's the sponsor that puts it in, and then once the sponsors put it in, then the beneficiary then will be contacted by the US government and they have to provide that information in turn. And then once that's submitted, it seems like it's actually a really pretty quick timeline from when all of that's completed, and then they hear back again with some kind of approval. I'd say 2 weeks is what we're hearing right now. And then there's a travel authorization, and that also happens a bit things. So fast forward, they set up the flight details. In some cases, actually, in Poland, some of the people that we worked with, the Polish Air is like subsidized some of their flights, and then the sponsors have put some money in as well, and then they have arrived with the sponsor. And I'd say that one thing that's really important for our model, and something that one should be thinking about, is that we really don't, unless you are bringing over one's close family, we really don't aim for hosting. We really feel like we're looking for, as Kevin pointed out, most of these people, they're actually wanting to make a home in Milwaukee, and they're not going to be able to make a home while living in someone's extra room and sharing a bathroom and sharing a kitchen. So our actual piece is like really trying to set up and work with the family or the individual to get them into an independent space, which is going to be affordable for them in the longer term. And then provide them, help them to get to a place where they're able to pay their own rent and etc. So that was a slightly longer answer and a bit off topic, I suppose, but I think also relevant when thinking about the experience of bringing someone in, because that's what we've been doing with our Afghan families, and obviously what the Refugee Resettlement Program and what Jewish Family Services will aspire to as well is putting them into their own safe space.
Great,
And
thank you
just for
so.
clarification, I just wanted to share the scary stories were not on the side of the sponsor. It was when a beneficiary is not matched with a welcoming community like yours and like those that Isabel's working with and supporting.
Great. Isabel, thank you for answering the question. And Basha, thank you for that clarification. We had a question come in for JFS asking, how many cases are you currently working on?
So currently we're working on about 10 families. I'm collaborating with the Russian Social Services program that we have as well to help translate and work together and make sure all their needs are met.
Great, thank you so much. I've just gotten notice that we're a little bit short on time, but I would actually like to just ask a final question. How can people sign up for regular emails to know what opportunities to help are coming down the pike? It seems like things are changing all the time, and people may be able to help in one area or another. So they don't have to remember to visit a website. Is there a way that they could sign up for emails from any organization on this call?
Darcy, do you
I'm
want to
just
take?
looking at our website. We used to have regular updates. I think we are in a bit of a hiatus. I can put our site in the chat. There is a way to sign up for urgent action alerts related to these issues on our website. So I would urge you to visit our site and sign up for those. And certainly, we'll share opportunities with the field as they arrive.
Great, thank you. I see some opportunities in the chat, and I'd like to invite Tanya now to close us out.
Most of all, thank you to each of you for joining us for this webinar. And I know that many of you will have additional questions about how you can get involved. Thank you, Darcy, for clarifying that. While the Milwaukee Jewish Federation is a convener for today's program, you, our presenters, are the experts on how to provide support. So everyone who is registered for the program will receive the email with the contact information of our presenters. And we encourage you to contact them to learn even more. And thank you all again. Have a wonderful day.